The sound of breaking glass shattered the quiet dawn as Felicity Adams pushed over the wash basin in her desperate flight from the Gilded Rose Saloon. Blood from her split lip dripped onto the collar of her only decent dress as she stumbled through the back doorway into the alley, her heart hammering against her ribs like a frightened bird. Victor Holloway had finally gone too far. The saloon owner's heavy hand and cruel words had been her prison for nearly 2 years, but his drunken threat to sell her to the mining camp up north had broken something inside her, something that couldn't be mended with false promises or cheap gifts. The year was 1876, and Truckee, Nevada was still more wilderness than civilization, despite the railroad that had put the town on the map 4 years prior. The Sierra Nevada mountains loomed in the distance, watching impassively as Felicity fled down the muddy street, the first light of morning casting long shadows across the town. "Girl," Victor's voice bellowed from behind her, still slurred from last night's whiskey. "You get back here now, or I swear I'll have the sheriff on you for theft." Felicity didn't look back. The only thing she'd stolen was herself, and she'd rather die than return. At 22, she'd already lived a lifetime of hardship. Orphaned at 16 and tricked into working at the Gilded Rose with promises of respectable employment, she'd endured Victor's increasing cruelty as he transformed from employer to tormentor. She darted between 2 buildings, her thin shoes slipping in the morning dew as she made for the edge of town. She had no plan beyond escape, no destination beyond a way. The few coins sewn into the hem of her dress wouldn't get her far, but perhaps far enough to start again. The town was beginning to wake as she reached the outskirts. A milk wagon rolled past, the driver tipping his hat without really seeing her. A pair of miners stumbled home from a night shift, too exhausted to notice the woman with wild eyes and a bruised face. Felicity paused at the crossroads, heart still pounding. North led to more mining camps, south back toward California, east toward the heart of Nevada territory, and west into the mountains. Each direction offered only uncertainty, but staying meant certain misery or worse. The distant sound of hoofbeats made her decision for her. East it would be. She hurried across the open ground toward a stand of cottonwoods that might offer cover. Her legs ached, her split lip throbbed, and hunger gnawed at her belly, but fear drove her forward. The horse and rider appeared on the road she'd just abandoned, and Felicity pressed herself against the rough bark of a tree. It wasn't Victor. This rider sat tall in the saddle, not hunched like the saloon owner. A rancher perhaps, or a cowhand heading into town. As the rider drew closer, Felicity could see he was indeed a cowboy, dusty boots, worn denim, and a hat pulled low over his eyes. His horse, a dappled gray, snorted and tossed its head as they passed near her hiding place. For a moment she thought she'd escaped notice, then the horse stopped. The rider turned in his saddle, scanning the trees. "I can see you there," he called, his voice neither threatening nor particularly friendly. "No need to hide unless you're planning to rob me, which I wouldn't recommend." Felicity remained frozen, weighing her options. The man sighed audibly. "Look, I don't have all day. Come out or don't, but I've got cattle to tend to." Something in his matter-of-fact tone gave her courage. Slowly, Felicity stepped from behind the tree, keeping her eyes on the ground. "Good Lord," the man murmured, seeing her face. "Someone's done a number on you, miss." "I'm fine," Felicity said automatically, the lie bitter on her tongue. "Just traveling." The cowboy's eyebrows rose. "Traveling light, it seems?" His gaze took in her inappropriate dress, lack of baggage, and the dried blood on her collar. "And in a hurry." Felicity raised her chin, trying to summon dignity despite her appearance. "I have business eastward." "Do you now?" The cowboy adjusted his hat, revealing a face younger than she'd expected, perhaps late 20s, with a strong jaw shadowed with stubble and eyes the color of weathered leather. "East of Truckee is a whole lot of nothing for about 30 miles, then a whole lot of trouble after that." "I'll manage," she said, though she knew nothing of surviving in the open country. The man studied her for a long moment. "You running from the law or from a man?" The directness of the question startled her. "I've done nothing wrong. Didn't ask if you had. Just wondering what kind of trouble might come riding after you." "The kind that owns a saloon," she answered, surprising herself with her candor. The cowboy nodded slowly. "Victor Holloway, I'm guessing." Felicity's eyes widened. "You know him, know of him. His reputation isn't exactly a secret." He glanced back toward town, then at the sun rising in the eastern sky. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles from here, needs a lot of work. I need someone to help with cooking and keeping the place in order while I'm working the land." Felicity stared at him, confused by the sudden change in conversation. "I'm offering you a job, miss," he clarified. "Room, board, and fair wages, no strings attached. Why would you help me?" Suspicion edged her voice. Men didn't offer help without expecting something in return. That lesson had been beaten into her at the Gilded Rose. "Because I need the help, and you need somewhere to go that isn't east into nowhere," he shrugged. "And because my mother raised me not to leave a woman in trouble when I could do something about it." Felicity hesitated, weighing the risk of trusting this stranger against the certainty of what awaited if Victor found her. "What's your name?" "Remington Caldwell. Most folks call me Rem." "I'm Felicity Adams." Rem nodded as if finalizing a business arrangement. "Well, Miss Adams, do you accept the position or not? I've got chores waiting." His directness was oddly reassuring. No false charm, no leering looks, just a straightforward offer. "I accept," she said finally. "Good." He extended his hand down to her. "We'd best be on our way then. Holloway isn't known for giving up what he considers his property." The word property stung, but Felicity knew it was accurate in Victor's mind. She took Rem's hand, surprised by the gentleness in his calloused grip as he helped her onto the horse behind him. "Hold on," he instructed, and she tentatively placed her hands at his waist as the horse began moving. "The Circle C isn't much to look at right now," he continued as they rode, "but it's going to be something someday. My father left it to me when he passed last year, and I aim to make it the finest cattle ranch in Nevada territory." Felicity said nothing, focused on the strange intimacy of riding double with this man she'd just met. The horse's steady gait carried them away from Truckee, across open grassland dotted with sagebrush. Behind them, the town grew smaller, and with it, she hoped, the reach of Victor Holloway. After nearly an hour of riding, a small homestead came into view, a modest cabin with a barn and corral beside it. A few cattle grazed in the distance, and a thin trail of smoke rose from the cabin's chimney. "Home sweet home," Rem said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Like I said, it's not much yet, but it's honest work and you'll be safe here." As they approached, a dog came bounding out to meet them, a black and white border collie that circled the horse excitedly. "That's Patch," Rem explained. "Best cattle dog in the territory, even if he is too friendly for his own good." He brought the horse to a stop before the cabin and dismounted with easy grace, then reached up to help Felicity down. Her legs felt wobbly after the long ride, and she steadied herself against the horse's flank. "Come on in. I've got coffee on and you look like you could use some." Rem led the way to the cabin door. "It's not fancy, but it's clean." The interior of the cabin was indeed clean, if sparse. A stone fireplace dominated one wall with a cookstove beside it. A rough-hewn table with 4 chairs stood in the center of the main room, and a curtained doorway presumably led to a bedroom. Various tools hung on the walls, alongside a rifle and shotgun. "You can have the bedroom," Rem said, motioning toward the curtained doorway. "I've been sleeping out here anyway, more convenient for tending the fire at night." "I couldn't take your bedroom," Felicity protested. "I'll be fine out here." Rem shook his head firmly. "A lady needs her privacy. Besides, my pa would haunt me if I made a woman sleep on the floor while I took a bed." "I'm hardly a lady," Felicity said quietly, thinking of the Gilded Rose and how the townspeople looked at the women who worked there. Rem's expression softened. "You are to me, Miss Adams. Now let me show you where everything is, and then I need to check on the north pasture. Had some trouble with coyotes last week." Over the next hour, Rem gave her a tour of the small ranch, the barn with its 2 additional horses, the chicken coop with 6 laying hens, the vegetable garden that needed weeding, and the smokehouse where strips of venison hung drying. "You can start wherever you like," he told her. "Cooking, cleaning, the garden, whatever you feel up to. Don't push yourself today. That lip needs to heal." His eyes darkened. "And if Holloway or any of his men show up, that shotgun by the door is loaded. You use it if you need to." Felicity nodded, overwhelmed by the whirlwind change in her circumstances. Just hours ago, she'd been trapped in a nightmare, and now this stranger was offering her protection and autonomy she hadn't experienced in years. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked again. Rem looked at her for a long moment. "My sister," he said finally. "She ended up in a place like the Gilded Rose up in Virginia City. By the time I found her, it was too late. Consumption had taken hold." His jaw tightened. "She was 19. "I'm sorry," Felicity whispered. "It was 5 years ago, but I promised her I'd never look the other way again when I saw someone in similar straits." He adjusted his hat. "I'll be back by midday. Rest if you need to." With that, he mounted his horse and rode off toward the distant pasture, the dog racing alongside. Left alone, Felicity stood in the doorway of the cabin, scarcely able to believe the turn her life had taken. Freedom stretched before her like the vast Nevada sky, terrifying in its boundlessness, exhilarating in its possibility. She touched her split lip gently. It would heal. And perhaps, in this place, other less visible wounds might begin to heal as well. Turning back to the cabin, she rolled up her sleeves. There was work to be done, and for the first time in years it would be done on her own terms. The week that followed established a routine unlike anything Felicity had known at the Gilded Rose. She rose with the sun, prepared breakfast for herself and Rem, then spent her days tending to the cabin, the garden, and occasionally helping with the livestock when Rem needed an extra hand. Her split lip healed, and the bruises on her arms faded from purple to yellow. Rem proved to be a man of few words but consistent actions. He treated her with unfailing respect, never entering her room without permission, always thanking her for meals, and paying her weekly wages as promised. In the evenings, he often sat by the fire whittling or reading one of his small collection of books, while Felicity mended clothes or prepared food for the next day. They spoke little at first, both wary in their own ways. But gradually, the silence became comfortable rather than strained. On the 8th day, as Felicity was hanging laundry in the warm afternoon sun, she spotted a dust cloud on the road from town. Her heart seized with fear as she watched it approach, resolving into a rider on horseback. For a terrifying moment, she thought it might be Victor, come to drag her back to the saloon. She ran to the cabin, grabbed the shotgun as Rem had instructed, and stood trembling on the porch as the rider drew closer. Relief flooded her when she recognized the local sheriff, a gray-haired man named Daly whom she'd seen occasionally at the Gilded Rose. She lowered the shotgun but kept it ready. "Afternoon, madam," Sheriff Daly called as he dismounted. "I'm looking for Remington Caldwell." "He's out with the cattle," Felicity replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Should be back soon." The sheriff nodded, studying her face. "You'd be the woman who left Victor Holloway's place in a hurry last week." Felicity's grip tightened on the shotgun. "I would." "Holloway's making noise about stolen property and breach of contract." The sheriff's expression remained neutral. "Says you owe him for room and board, plus damages to his establishment." "The only contract was his fist against my face whenever I displeased him," Felicity replied, anger overcoming her fear. "And the only thing I took was myself." Sheriff Daly sighed heavily. "I figured as much. Holloway's been losing girls left and right lately, getting desperate, getting mean." "He was always mean," Felicity said quietly. The sound of hoofbeats announced Rem's return. He rode up quickly, having spotted the sheriff's horse from a distance. "Sheriff Daly," he greeted, dismounting and moving to stand near Felicity. "What brings you out to the Circle C?" "Holloway's making trouble about Miss Adams here," the sheriff explained. "Thought I should warn you both. He's been drinking heavy and talking about coming out to retrieve what's his. Rem's expression hardened. Miss Adams is employed by me legally and properly. She's not property to be retrieved. You and I know that, Caldwell, but Holloway's not one to respect niceties like law and decency. The sheriff removed his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. Just watch yourselves. I can't be riding out here every time he gets liquored up and makes threats. Understood, Rem said. We appreciate the warning. The sheriff nodded, then turned to Felicity. Miss, if you want to file a complaint about your treatment at the Gilded Rose, you're within your rights. Felicity shook her head. I just want to be left alone. Fair enough. Sheriff Daly replaced his hat. Caldwell, walk with me to my horse. Got something else to discuss. As the men moved away, Felicity watched them, anxiety churning in her stomach. She couldn't hear their conversation, but Rem's posture grew increasingly tense. When the sheriff finally rode away, Rem returned with a grim expression. What did he say? She asked. Holloway's been spreading rumors in town, Rem replied, his voice tight, implying you're providing services here that you provided there. Felicity felt her face flush with humiliation and anger. I was never, she began, then stopped herself. I served drinks and endured pawing hands, nothing more, though not for lack of Victor trying to force the issue. Rem's expression softened. I know, you don't need to explain anything to me. But the town will believe him, Felicity said bitterly. They always do. Let them talk, Rem said firmly. We know the truth. That night, Rem cleaned his rifles and checked the locks on the doors and windows before turning in. Felicity lay awake in the small bedroom, listening to the night sounds of the ranch and wondering if she'd brought danger to this man who'd shown her nothing but kindness. 3 more days passed without incident, and Felicity began to hope that Victor had given up his pursuit. She was hanging laundry again when she heard a wagon approaching. This time, she didn't run for the shotgun immediately, as Rem was working nearby, repairing a fence. The wagon came into view, not Victor, but a middle-aged couple Felicity didn't recognize. Rem straightened, setting aside his tools and walking toward the approaching visitors. The Thompsons, he explained quietly to Felicity as he passed. Neighbors from about 2 miles west. Good folks. Relieved, Felicity continued with the laundry, though she stayed within earshot of the conversation. Caldwell, the man called cheerfully as he brought the wagon to a stop. Thought we'd bring by those fence posts I promised. Martha baked some apple pies too. Much appreciated, John, Rem replied, helping the woman down from the wagon. Mrs. Thompson's curious gaze fell on Felicity. And who might this be? This is Miss Felicity Adams, Rem introduced. She's keeping house for me, helping with the ranch. Mrs. Thompson's eyebrows rose slightly. Is that so? Well, it's a pleasure, Miss Adams. Felicity nodded politely, recognizing the subtle judgment in the woman's tone. Martha, Mr. Thompson chided gently. Don't go getting that look. Rem's a decent man and can hire who he pleases. Of course, Mrs. Thompson said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I just hadn't realized you were in need of household help, Mr. Caldwell. Been needed it for some time, Rem answered evenly. Just fortunate Miss Adams was looking for honest work. The emphasis on honest wasn't lost on any of them. Mrs. Thompson's smile tightened further. Well, we heard some talk in town, but I never put much stock in gossip. Wise policy, Rem said. John, let's get those fence posts unloaded. Miss Adams, would you mind showing Mrs. Thompson to the kitchen? I'm sure she'd like to set those pies somewhere safe. Felicity led the older woman into the cabin, acutely aware of her assessing gaze taking in every detail of the modest home. It's very tidy, Mrs. Thompson commented, setting her pies on the table. Thank you, Felicity replied. I do my best to keep things in order. The older woman's eyes narrowed slightly. You know, Miss Adams, a young man like Remington Caldwell has prospects in this community. He's worked hard to establish himself since his father's passing. Felicity met the woman's gaze steadily. Mr. Caldwell has been very kind to offer me employment when I needed it most. Yes, I'm sure he has. Mrs. Thompson adjusted her bonnet. but kindness can be misinterpreted, especially when a single man takes in a woman with a colorful past. Anger flashed through Felicity. My past is my own, Mrs. Thompson, as is Mr. Caldwell's reputation. I'm simply a housekeeper here. Of course, the woman said, not believing for a moment. I just hope you appreciate the position you're putting him in. The Caldwells have been respected in this county for 2 generations. Before Felicity could respond, the men entered carrying a pie each. Martha makes the best apple pie in Nevada territory, Mr. Thompson announced proudly. It certainly smells wonderful, Felicity managed, fighting to keep her composure. We can't stay, Mrs. Thompson said quickly. We're expected at the Millers for dinner. After awkward farewells, the Thompsons departed, leaving an uncomfortable silence in their wake. I heard, Rem said quietly as they watched the wagon disappear down the road. Martha Thompson never could keep her voice down. Felicity turned to him, distress evident in her face. I'm damaging your standing in the community. Perhaps I should. Don't, Rem interrupted firmly. Don't even suggest leaving because of wagging tongues. If people want to think the worst, that's their failing, not ours. But your reputation is mine to worry about, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, my father built this ranch caring about the land and the animals, not about impressing neighbors. I aim to do the same. His convictions silenced her protests, but the seed of doubt had been planted. She was bringing complications to Rem's life, complications he didn't deserve. That evening, as they ate dinner in relative silence, Felicity gathered her courage. I should learn to shoot, she said suddenly. Rem looked up, surprised. The shotgun, and maybe a pistol, she added. If Victor does come here, I don't want to be helpless, and I don't want you to have to. She trailed off, unable to articulate her fear that he might be hurt protecting her. Rem considered this, then nodded. That's sensible. We'll start tomorrow morning before it gets too hot. True to his word, after breakfast the next day, Rem took Felicity to a clearing behind the barn. He brought the shotgun and a revolver, along with a wooden crate for target practice. The shotgun's simpler, he explained. Just aim in the general direction and squeeze the trigger. But it's heavy and the kick can catch you off guard. He demonstrated, blasting a hole in the crate, then handed the weapon to Felicity. She was surprised by its weight but determined to master it. Her first shot went wild, the recoil nearly knocking her over. Rem steadied her with a hand at her elbow, his touch light but supportive. Brace yourself more, he advised. Like this. He positioned himself behind her, adjusting her stance with gentle guidance. Felicity was acutely aware of his proximity, of the clean scent of soap and leather that surrounded him. Her second shot was better, clipping the edge of the crate. Good, Rem said, stepping back. Now the revolver. The handgun was easier for her to handle, though her aim needed work. After an hour of practice, she could hit the crate consistently, if not precisely where she aimed. You're a natural, Rem said, approval warming his voice. We'll practice every few days until you're comfortable. Felicity felt a strange mix of empowerment and sadness. Learning to defend herself was necessary, but it was a stark reminder of the danger that still shadowed her. As they walked back to the cabin, Rem suddenly asked, How did you end up at the Gilded Rose, if you don't mind my asking? The question caught her off guard. They'd spoken of many things in the past days, but never this. My parents died of fever when I was 16, she began hesitantly. I had no other family, so I took work as a seamstress in Sacramento. The pay was poor, the hours long, but I managed. She paused, the memories still painful. When I was 20, a well-dressed man came into the shop. Said he represented businesses in Nevada territory looking for skilled women workers. Offered twice what I was making, plus room and board. Rem's expression darkened. And that man was Holloway, Felicity nodded. He seemed so respectable. By the time we reached Truckee and I realized what kind of work he had in mind, it was too late. He took my few belongings, said I owed him for the journey. Said no decent establishment would hire me once he spread word about me. And you stayed for 2 years, Rem said softly, not judging, just understanding. I tried leaving once before, Felicity admitted. About 6 months in, Victor caught me on the road out of town, broke 2 of my ribs. She swallowed hard. He made sure everyone saw what happened when you crossed him. Rem's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. Men like that deserve, he cut himself off, taking a deep breath. I'm sorry that happened to you. This time I was ready to die trying, Felicity said simply. Then you came along. Rem looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. I'm glad you didn't have to test that resolve. The moment stretched between them, filled with things unsaid. Then Patch came bounding up, breaking the tension as he circled them excitedly. That dog, Rem said with a laugh, has the worst timing in the territory. Felicity smiled, grateful for the interruption. They returned to the cabin, each lost in their own thoughts about what had been revealed. That night, a summer storm rolled in from the mountains. Rain pounded against the cabin roof, and lightning illuminated the main room where Rem slept. Unable to rest, Felicity sat by her window, watching the dramatic display of nature's power. A particularly loud crack of thunder startled her, and in the following flash of lightning, she saw something that made her blood run cold: the silhouette of a man standing near the corral. Heart racing, she peered through the rain-streaked glass, trying to determine if her eyes had deceived her. Another lightning flash confirmed her fears. Someone was definitely out there. Felicity grabbed her robe and hurried to the main room. Rem, she whispered urgently, touching his shoulder. He woke instantly, years of ranch life having taught him to come alert at the slightest disturbance. What is it? Someone's outside, she said, her voice tight with fear. By the corral. Rem was on his feet in seconds, reaching for his rifle. Stay here, he instructed, moving to the window. Lightning flashed again and his body tensed. I see him. Looks like just one person, but there could be others. He pulled on his boots. Stay inside, keep the shotgun ready. I'm going to circle around the back. Be careful, Felicity pleaded, clutching the shotgun. Rem nodded grimly, then slipped out the back door into the storm. Felicity positioned herself by the front window, shotgun raised, watching for any movement. The minutes stretched endlessly, each flash of lightning making her heart skip. Finally, she heard voices: Rem's, raised in anger, and another, too distant to make out clearly. She moved to the door, torn between staying safe inside as instructed and going to help. The decision was made for her when the door suddenly burst open. Rem entered, pushing a bedraggled man before him, the rifle at the intruder's back. Look what I found sneaking around, Rem said, his voice cold with anger. The man stumbled, catching himself against the table. He was young, barely 20, with a thin face and frightened eyes. Please, he gasped. I wasn't stealing nothing, I swear. Then what were you doing on my property in the middle of a storm? Rem demanded. Looking for her, the young man said, pointing at Felicity. Miss Adams. I work at the stables in town. Mr. Holloway's been asking all over for her, offering money to anyone who can tell him where she went. Felicity's grip tightened on the shotgun. And you thought you'd collect that money? The young man shook his head vigorously. No, I mean yes, I followed rumors that led here, but not for the reward. He swallowed hard. My sister Betsy works at the Gilded Rose. She asked me to warn you. Holloway's gathered some men. They're coming tomorrow. Rem and Felicity exchanged alarmed glances. How many men? Rem asked, lowering the rifle slightly. 4, including Holloway, rough types from the mining camp. The young man shivered, his clothes soaked through. Betsy overheard them talking. They plan to take Miss Adams back and teach you a lesson for interfering. Does Sheriff Daly know about this? Felicity asked. The young man shrugged. Holloway pays him to look the other way most times. Rem's expression hardened. What's your name, boy? Daniel, sir. Daniel Fuller. Well, Daniel, you've had a long ride in bad weather to deliver this warning. That took courage. Rem set the rifle aside. Felicity, can you find something dry for him to wear and maybe some hot coffee? As Felicity moved to comply, Rem continued questioning Daniel, getting details about Holloway's plans and the men he'd hired. The news was grim. Victor was bringing serious trouble. men known for violence in the mining camps. After Daniel had changed into some of Rem's spare clothes and warmed himself with coffee and leftover stew, Rem made a decision. "You'll stay here tonight," he told the young man. "Too dangerous to travel back in this storm. Tomorrow you'll head straight to the Thompson place, tell them what's happening, and ask John to ride for Sheriff Daly in Carson City, not Truckee. We need a lawman Holloway doesn't own." "What about you two?" Daniel asked, glancing between them. "We'll be ready," Rem said simply. After settling Daniel on a pallet near the fire, Rem motioned for Felicity to follow him to her room for a private conversation. "You should leave at first light," he told her quietly. "Take the back trail through the mountains. I can hold them off long enough for you to get a good head start." Felicity stared at him in disbelief. "I'm not running." "Holloway's bringing men who kill for a living," Rem argued. "This isn't about pride, it's not about pride," Felicity interrupted. "It's about being tired of running. It's about not letting you face danger alone because of me." "Felicity, no," she squared her shoulders. "I can shoot now, remember? I'll stand with you." Rem looked at her for a long moment, conflict evident in his expression. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "Thank you," she replied, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "If you're staying, we need a plan. The cabin's defensible, but we're outnumbered." They spent the next hour discussing strategy, speaking in low voices to avoid disturbing Daniel. By the time they finished, the storm had passed and dawn was approaching. "Try to get some rest," Rem advised. "Tomorrow will come soon enough." Sleep proved elusive for Felicity. She lay awake, listening to the dripping of rain from the eaves and thinking about the man in the next room, a man willing to risk his life to protect her. In the Gilded Rose, she'd learned to distrust male kindness, seeing it as merely a prelude to demands and disappointment. Rem Caldwell was proving to be something different entirely. Morning arrived with clear skies and the chirping of birds, a deceptively peaceful backdrop for the confrontation to come. Daniel departed early as planned, riding for the Thompson ranch with promises to return with help. As the sun climbed higher, Rem and Felicity prepared the cabin. They barricaded the back door, positioned furniture for cover, and loaded all available weapons. "They'll likely come around midday," Rem said, checking the sight on his rifle. "Holloway's not an early riser, and they'll want time to prepare." Felicity nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. "What if they burn the cabin?" "We'll have to make sure it doesn't come to that," Rem replied grimly. "If it does, we retreat to the root cellar. It's small, but its stone and earth won't burn." By noon, the waiting had become nearly unbearable. They ate a cold lunch, neither having much appetite but knowing they needed strength. "I never asked," Felicity said suddenly, "why you named this place the Circle C." Rem looked surprised by the question. "My father's idea. Said a circle never ends, just keeps going. Thought it was fitting for a legacy he hoped would continue through generations." "It's a good name," Felicity said softly. "A good legacy." Rem's eyes held hers. "If we get through today," he was interrupted by Patch's warning bark from outside. A moment later they heard the distant sound of horses approaching. "They're coming," Rem said, moving to the window. 4 riders, like Daniel said. Felicity picked up the shotgun, her hands steadier than she'd expected. "I'm ready." Rem gave her a quick, fierce glance. "Stay low, stay covered." "Don't be brave if it means being foolish." She nodded, taking position by the other window as the riders drew closer. Through the glass, she could see Victor Holloway leading 3 rough-looking men, all armed. "Caldwell," Victor shouted as they reined in about 50 yards from the cabin. "Send out my property and maybe you'll live to see sunset." Rem opened the door a crack, keeping his body shielded. "There's no property of yours here, Holloway, just a free woman who works for me," Victor's face contorted with rage. "That whore belongs to me. I paid good money bringing her from California. You lied to her and imprisoned her," Rem called back. "Now she's made her choice. Ride away while you still can." One of the men with Victor, a burly figure with a scar across his cheek, leaned over to say something. Victor nodded in agreement. "Last chance, Caldwell," Victor shouted. "Or we burn you both out. You try it and you'll die before you light the match," Rem replied coldly. The standoff held for several tense seconds. Then, with a gesture from Victor, the men spread out, taking cover behind water troughs, fence posts, and the wagon. "They're surrounding us," Felicity whispered. "Expected as much," Rem replied, moving back from the door. "Remember, only shoot when you have a clear target. We need to make every bullet count." The first shot came from the scarred man, splintering the window frame near Rem's head. He returned fire immediately, sending the man diving for better cover. What followed was a chaotic exchange of gunfire. The attackers fired at the cabin windows while gradually working closer. Rem moved methodically from window to window, his shots carefully placed to keep the men pinned down. Felicity waited at her assigned position, watching the side of the cabin that was partially obscured from Rem's view. When one of Victor's men made a dash toward that side, she fired the shotgun, missing him but forcing him back. "Good," Rem called from across the room. "Keep them honest." The exchange continued for nearly 20 minutes, neither side gaining a clear advantage. The cabin walls were thick enough to stop most bullets, but splinters flew with each impact, and Felicity knew it was only a matter of time before someone got lucky or desperate. That moment came when Victor, frustrated by the stalemate, emerged from behind the wagon with a burning torch. "See how brave you are when your home is burning around you," he shouted, running toward the cabin. Rem took aim and fired, but his shot went wide as he was forced to duck from another attacker's bullet. Felicity swung the shotgun toward Victor, but before she could pull the trigger, the scarred man fired at her window, showering her with broken glass. Victor reached the side of the cabin, torch held high. Felicity scrambled to her feet, ignoring the cuts on her face from the glass. "He's going to set the fire," she cried. Rem was already moving, heading for the back window. "Cover me," he shouted, climbing through. Felicity fired the shotgun toward the men in front, forcing them to cover just as Rem disappeared outside. Heart pounding, she reloaded, then moved to a position where she could see more of the yard. Rem had circled behind Victor, who was just about to touch the torch to the cabin wall. With a flying tackle, Rem brought the saloon owner down, the torch falling harmlessly onto damp ground. The two men rolled, grappling fiercely. Victor was heavier, but Rem was younger and stronger. They exchanged blows, each fighting with the desperation of men who knew their lives hung in the balance. Seeing their boss in trouble, Victor's men began converging on the fight. Felicity fired the shotgun again, hitting one man in the leg and sending him sprawling with a howl of pain. The other two hesitated, caught between helping Victor and dealing with the threat from the cabin. In that moment of indecision, the sound of galloping horses reached them, riders approaching fast from the direction of town. "It's the sheriff," someone shouted. Indeed, Sheriff Daly was leading a group of 6 men, including John Thompson and, surprisingly, Daniel Fuller, toward the cabin at full gallop. Victor's remaining men lost their nerve, running for their horses. Victor himself, momentarily distracted by the approaching riders, received a powerful blow from Rem that left him dazed on the ground. As the sheriff and his posse arrived, Felicity rushed from the cabin, heedless of danger, to where Rem was binding Victor's hands with a length of rope. "Are you hurt?" she demanded, seeing blood on Rem's face. "Just a cut," he assured her. "Nothing serious." "You, the same," she replied, touching the small cuts from the broken window. Sheriff Daly dismounted, surveying the scene with a grim expression. "Looks like we got here just in time." John Thompson rode into Carson City at dawn with quite a tale. "A true one," Rem said, hauling Victor to his feet. "Holloway and his men attacked us, threatened to burn us out." Victor, blood streaming from his nose, glared at them both. "She's mine by contract. I paid for her passage, her room, her board." "Shut your mouth," Sheriff Daly interrupted coldly. "I've heard enough complaints about your contracts to last a lifetime." He turned to his deputies. "Round up the others. They'll all stand trial for attempted murder." As the wounded men were collected and secured, John Thompson approached Rem and Felicity. "You two all right?" Martha's beside herself with worry. "We're fine," Rem assured him. "Thanks to Daniel's warning and your quick ride." Daniel, hovering nearby, looked embarrassed by the praise. "My sister would have skinned me alive if I hadn't helped," Sheriff Daly, having secured Victor on a horse, rejoined them. "Miss Adams, I'll need your statement about Holloway's treatment of you. Might help keep him locked up longer." Felicity nodded, though the thought of publicly recounting her ordeal made her stomach clench. "I'll do what's necessary." "Good." The sheriff looked between her and Rem. "You know, to avoid further misunderstandings in the community, you two might consider formalizing your arrangement." "Our arrangement is already formal," Rem replied stiffly. "Miss Adams is my employee," the sheriff raised an eyebrow. "That may be, but after today's events, tongues will wag even more, just something to consider." After the sheriff and his prisoners departed, John Thompson helped Rem repair the broken windows and damaged door. Mrs. Thompson arrived later with food and medical supplies, her earlier judgment seemingly replaced with genuine concern after hearing about the danger they'd faced. That evening, when they were finally alone again, Felicity found Rem sitting on the porch staring at the darkening sky. She joined him silently, bringing 2 cups of coffee. "Thank you," he said, accepting one. "For standing your ground today, you showed real courage." "So did you," she replied. "You could have sent me away, avoided all this trouble. Wouldn't have been right." He sipped his coffee. "Besides, the Circle C needs you." The simple statement warmed her more than the coffee. "Does it?" Rem turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I do too." Felicity's heart quickened. "What are you saying, Rem?" "I'm saying Sheriff Daly wasn't entirely wrong about formalizing things." He set his cup down, clearly uncomfortable with such direct conversation. "Not because of wagging tongues, but because—" "Well, these weeks with you here, they've been good. Better than good." "They have," Felicity agreed softly. "I know it's too soon," Rem continued hurriedly. "You've been through hell, and the last thing you need is pressure from me. But I want you to know that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd be honored to court you properly." Felicity found herself smiling, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Remington Caldwell, are you asking permission to court me?" He nodded, looking both determined and vulnerable. "I am. Though I understand if it's too soon or if you don't—" "Yes," Felicity interrupted. "It's not too soon, not for me." Relief and joy spread across Rem's face. Tentatively, he reached for her hand and she gave it willingly. "I never thought I'd find this," she admitted. "Trust, safety. The possibility of more." "Neither did I," Rem said. "Not after losing my family. I thought the ranch would be enough." They sat together as twilight deepened into night, hands entwined, the future stretching before them like the vast Nevada sky, still uncertain but full of promise. In the weeks that followed, Victor Holloway and his men were tried and sentenced to prison terms for their attack on the Circle C. Felicity's testimony about her treatment at the Gilded Rose helped ensure Victor received the maximum sentence, 10 years of hard labor. With that shadow lifted, she and Rem began their courtship in earnest. True to his word, he was patient and respectful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. They attended church together in town, where Felicity gradually won acceptance from most of the community, though there were always a few who remembered her connection to the Gilded Rose. Rem's business prospered that year. He acquired more cattle, hired 2 ranch hands to help with the expanding herd, and began making plans to build a larger home the following spring. Through it all, Felicity remained by his side, no longer just a housekeeper but a true partner in the venture. Daniel Fuller became a regular visitor, eventually accepting Rem's offer of employment at the Circle C. His sister Betsy, with the Gilded Rose closed after Victor's imprisonment, found respectable work at the hotel in Carson City. As Christmas approached, bringing with it the first snows, Rem took Felicity into town to select supplies for the holiday. The streets of Truckee were festive, decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons. They visited the general store, placing orders for special treats and small gifts for the ranch hands. While Felicity was examining bolts of fabric, Rem disappeared briefly, returning with a mysterious smile and refusing to tell her where he'd been. On Christmas Eve, with a fire blazing in the hearth and the small cabin decorated with pine branches and paper ornaments they'd made together, Rem presented Felicity with a small box. "It's not much," he said nervously, "but I saw it and thought of you." Inside was a delicate silver locket, simple but beautifully crafted. Felicity gasped, touching it gently. "It's lovely," she whispered. "Will you help me put it on?" As Rem fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers brushed against her skin, sending a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the fire. "I have something for you too," she said, retrieving a package from her room. Rem unwrapped it to find a handsome leather-bound journal, the cover stamped with the Circle C brand. "For your plans for the ranch," Felicity explained, "and maybe our future." Rem looked at her, his eyes filled with emotion. "Our future," he repeated. "I like the sound of that." He set the journal aside and took her hands in his. "Felicity Adams, I've come to love you more than I thought possible. You've brought life and purpose to this place and to me. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Though she had begun to hope for this moment, the reality of it still took her breath away. "Yes," she managed through tears of joy. "Yes, I will." Their first kiss was gentle, a promise sealed beside the crackling fire as snow fell softly outside, blanketing the Circle C in pristine white. They were married in the spring of 1877, when the wildflowers carpeted the Nevada plains in a riot of color. The ceremony took place at the Circle C, with Reverend Collins from Carson City officiating. John and Martha Thompson attended, along with Sheriff Daly, Daniel and Betsy Fuller, the ranch hands, and a few townsfolk who had come to respect Rem and accept Felicity. The new house wasn't quite finished, but it was far enough along for the celebration to take place on its wide front porch. Felicity wore a simple dress of ivory silk, with wildflowers in her hair and Rem's locket around her neck. Rem, uncharacteristically nervous, fumbled the ring but recovered with a laugh that set everyone at ease. "I, Remington, take you, Felicity, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he spoke clearly, his eyes never leaving hers. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." When Felicity repeated the vows, her voice was steady and sure. The frightened woman who had fled the Gilded Rose nearly a year before was gone, replaced by someone who knew her own strength and worth. After the ceremony, there was feasting and dancing in the new barn. Mrs. Thompson, now firmly in Felicity's corner, had organized the food with military precision. Daniel and the other young men had cleared the barn floor for dancing, and one of the ranch hands played fiddle while another accompanied on harmonica. As twilight approached, Rem led Felicity away from the celebration, taking her to a small rise overlooking the ranch. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, still sounding awed by the title, "I'd like to show you something." From this vantage point, they could see the entire Circle C, the original cabin, the new house taking shape beside it, the barn with lanterns now glowing in the gathering dusk, the corrals and pastures stretching toward the distant mountains. "Pa always said a man should be able to see his whole world from a single spot," Rem said, his arm around her waist. "I never understood what he meant until now." Felicity leaned against him, overcome with gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this place, to this man. "It's beautiful," she said. "All of it. And it's ours," Rem replied. "To build, to grow, to pass on someday." The mention of future generations brought a warm blush to Felicity's cheeks. They had spoken of children, both eager to fill the new house with family. "I never dared to dream of this," she admitted. "Even when I left the Gilded Rose, I was just running away. I never imagined I was running toward something so perfect." "Not perfect," Rem corrected gently. "We'll have our struggles, drought years, hard winters, but we'll face them together." As darkness fell completely, they rejoined their guests, dancing and celebrating until the moon rose high above the Circle C. Their life together unfolded like the seasons, each bringing its own joys and challenges. The first year brought the completion of the new house, with its spacious kitchen where Felicity loved to bake, and the parlor where Rem would read aloud in the evenings while she sewed. The second year brought their first child, a son they named James, after Rem's father. The boy arrived during a blizzard in February, with Martha Thompson serving as midwife since the doctor couldn't reach them through the snow. Rem paced anxiously outside the bedroom door until Martha emerged with the news that both mother and child were doing well. "He has your eyes," Felicity told Rem when he finally entered, cradling their son with a mixture of exhaustion and radiant joy. Rem, overcome with emotion, could only kiss her forehead and touch his son's tiny hand with wonder. The ranch prospered along with the family. Rem's careful management and willingness to adopt new breeding techniques resulted in a herd that commanded top prices at market. He reinvested the profits in land, gradually expanding the Circle C until it became one of the largest operations in the county. Felicity, while devoted to home and children, also contributed to the business side of the ranch. Her meticulous record-keeping and natural head for figures often spotted opportunities Rem might have missed. Together, they made decisions about investments, expansions, and improvements. Their family grew with the addition of a daughter, Eleanor, in 1880, and another son, Thomas, in 1882. The children thrived in the freedom of ranch life, learning to ride almost as soon as they could walk. The Circle C became known for its hospitality as well as its cattle. Travelers passing through could count on a meal and a place to rest, and neighbors gathered regularly for celebrations and barn raisings. Even Mrs. Thompson eventually admitted that her initial concerns about Felicity had been terribly misplaced. "You've proven me wrong in every way," she told Felicity at Eleanor's baptism. "And I've never been happier to be mistaken. Not all times were easy." A drought in 1883 nearly destroyed the herd, forcing Rem to drive the cattle far into the mountains in search of grazing land. He was gone for weeks, leaving Felicity to manage the ranch with only Daniel and one other hand to help. When Rem finally returned, thinner and exhausted but with most of the cattle saved, Felicity met him at the gate, the children running ahead to greet their father. "I was beginning to think you'd become a mountain man," she teased, though her eyes revealed how worried she'd been. "And leave all this?" Rem replied, dismounting to embrace her. "Never." That night, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch of their home, looking out at the land that had become their legacy. "When I found you that morning, running from Holloway," Rem said reflectively, "I never imagined where it would lead. When you found me." Felicity laughed softly. "I distinctly recall finding you, or at least your horse did." "Either way," Rem conceded with a smile, "it was the luckiest day of my life." "Mine too," Felicity said, leaning her head against his shoulder, "though I was too frightened to know it then." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Nevada sky. The Circle C slumbered around them, cattle in the distant pastures, horses in the barn, children in their beds, a legacy built from courage, respect, and love that had begun with a desperate flight and a chance encounter on the road to Truckee. In the years that followed, the story of how Felicity Adams escaped the Gilded Rose and found not just safety but love with Remington Caldwell became something of a legend in the county. Young girls sighed over the romance of it, while their practical mothers pointed to the hard work and determination that had built the Circle C into a thriving enterprise. Felicity herself never forgot the fear and uncertainty of that dawn escape, or the courage it had taken to trust a stranger. But with each passing year, those memories were overlaid with newer, brighter ones. James taking his first steps across the kitchen floor, Eleanor learning to read at the kitchen table, Thomas taming his first colt under Rem's watchful eye. By 1890, the Circle C employed over a dozen hands and ran cattle on more than 5,000 acres. James, at 13, was already showing his father's gift for working with animals. Eleanor, at 10, had her mother's head for figures and spent hours helping with the ranch accounts. Thomas, at 8, was the dreamer of the family, always exploring the far corners of the property or creating elaborate stories to entertain his siblings. Rem, approaching 40, had added streaks of gray to his temples but lost none of his vigor or love for the land. Felicity, in her mid-30s, had grown into her role as the heart of both family and ranch, respected throughout the county for her wisdom and generosity. On a warm evening in the summer of that year, as they celebrated their 13th wedding anniversary with a small gathering of family and close friends, Sheriff Daly, now retired, but still a regular visitor, raised his glass in a toast. "To Rem and Felicity," he said, his voice carrying across the festive table set up in the yard, "who proved that sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the most unexpected places." As glasses clinked and congratulations echoed, Rem squeezed Felicity's hand beneath the table. "Happy Mrs. Caldwell," he murmured. Felicity looked around at the life they had built, the home, the children, the friends, the land stretching toward the horizon, and then back at the man who had offered her work and respect when she needed it most, and love when she was ready to receive it. "Completely," she replied, and sealed the truth of it with a kiss.